All right, and we are live. Hey everybody, and welcome to Skagit County Track and Field Podcast, episode 10. We have hit double digits, and I'm very excited to have on the show today both Jake and I's boss and good friend, Mr. Kevin Owen, the athletic director here at Sedro-Woolley, and he is going to bless us today with some pole vault knowledge. So we're going to talk some pole vault as well as some other things. But Kevin, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate you being here.
I'm glad to be here. You just like I said before this started, I love talking any sport with you guys.
Well, let's let the listeners get to know you a little bit. This is the 2-minute drill. Give us a quick and dirty background on both you as a high school athlete, and then your coaching history into your current position as the athletic director.
Yeah, so I played basically every sport growing up, and that was kind of one of the things I try to project to any kid that will listen to me in Woolley is that we try to create athletes at Sedro-Woolley, and we're not just trying to specialize kids. And so when it comes to making your choices, every sport can benefit other sports. And so growing up, I did almost everything that was available. And then in high school, I was a football player, a wrestler, and a pole vaulter is what I'd say, but I was in track. Um, and so I did quite a few events in track. Pole vault was my main focus, and it was a family affair when it comes to it. And I think you guys are bringing me on because out of osmosis that I can talk about track, because I have a sister who was in a few Olympic trials finals for pole vault, and I got a wife who's on the USATF medical staff, so she does national and some world event stuff, and I'll be getting in the future some easy tickets to fun places because of her.
Yeah. Okay, so don't just gloss over your. I know you're on here to talk pole vault, but don't just gloss over your wrestling career. Talk to
Yeah.
us real quick about that.
Yeah, coming out of high school, I had looks for football. I always knew what my course was going to be because I was getting bigger looks with wrestling, and so I ended up at North Carolina. So I wrestled for the Tar Heels, and then after that, I kind of went. I had an injury with a car accident, and so kind of changed my mindset and decided to go athletic administration rather than just the coaching side of things, which is what all my siblings and a bunch of cousins and different people did. Was our mindset as a family was you kind of go to college, you all American, and then you get a grad assistant job for that sport, and then you coach in college. And my brother was a assistant coach at Harvard for 6 years. My sister was assistant coach at Grand Canyon University for a while, and my other sister was competing at the senior level as a sponsored athlete for USA for track and field. So decided to go the administrative route and ended up as an athletic director.
Yeah, well, we're lucky to have you here, that's for sure, and lucky to have a guy like you with a lot of track knowledge and pedigree behind you. So we appreciate you.
Yeah.
All right, I think we'll go on to we've been asking all the coaches essentially to kind of give us their relationship with the county meet, their approach to the county meet, and so obviously not from the coaching side, but from the athletic directing side. Can you kind of tell us what your experience with the county meet has been as we've hosted it, as you were the AD, and again, your observation as a fan of track with that particular meet?
Yeah. I'll go broad first and then I'll narrow it down to that because I love competition. I mean, I think anybody that's met me knows that I'm a very competitive person and I love to create rivalries, and it's just something that I think drives like a healthy, environment for a community. And so like right when I got here, it was we beat Burlington. Like I don't care what it takes. Like we have to try to beat Burlington. They're our rivals. And then at the broader spectrum, it's the county, right? Where I celebrate that stuff on a daily basis. Anytime we're taking on teams in the county at all of our sports, um, you know, I'll post something on social media or on the website, and I'll keep it pinned for multiple weeks if it's one of our rivals, because I think that that's like a healthy thing that you do is you try to create what you guys do with the county meet, which is it's a big deal to beat our rivals. And I always had it growing up. When I was younger, we had a town that was 11 miles from us where you just hated each other, even though you were friends. When it came to athletics, that was like your rival. I get to college and it's Tar Heels versus the Dukies. It's the Devils, right? So you absolutely, that's your rival. That's who you have to beat, and everything you focus on starts there, and then it goes bigger picture. And so for us, I like to project it as we're beating Burlington. Mount Vernon's in that conversation. Anacortes is in that conversation, and then we have other schools in the county. But then when you have something like the county meet, it's so important that's a big deal to our kids. Mm-hmm. Like, there are a lot of kids that have big aspirations where they want to be college athletes, that doesn't always work out, right? That they want to be state champs, that doesn't always work out. Well, you use these things like these rivalries and these county competitions that we do, and those are building blocks to those bigger things. And so I think it's just as important as a state title, because of the fact that it's part of the building that goes into those things. And some of these kids won't see those higher level things. So why can't this be their pinnacle? Why can't it be their NCAA tournament? Right. And I think you guys, more than anybody, you do such a good job of making that known that it's important. Right. It drives me crazy when coaches, kind of brush off stuff. Like I've definitely had different incidences since I've started as an AD, where coaches will just say in passing, well, this doesn't matter, we're just focused on the Nike hole in the wall, or like whatever. And I'm just like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, you should be just as passionate about beating the kids that you're always around than going to a state or a national competition, because it's one of the stepping stones to get there. And so that's, the county's a big deal. Like, at every sport we do it at, when it comes to even when we're in this winter season, like the wrestling and the basketball, like, it's a big deal to beat like our county foes, our county opponents. And then when it comes to something like track, we get to literally bring everybody together and compete against them and say, like, we run this county, right? Mm-hmm. That's a big deal to me.
Yeah, and Jake, I'm going to jump in here. I'm glad you said that, because we've already interviewed all the head coaches, and before we did this podcast, I thought we had a competitive edge. Like, hey, we treat the county meet as like a huge, important deal, because on the calendar, on the schedule, it's just another league meet. I mean, really, that's what it is. But it's way more than that to us, and it's way more than that to our kids. So I thought that gave us a competitive advantage. But every single coach that's been on here has said that they treat the county meet way differently. It's their dress rehearsal for postseason stuff. So I think exactly what you said holds true, and I'm glad that everybody in our county, holds it to that regard.
Yeah, I think that about anything where we like to think that, we're one of one, or, we're an edge above, but I also like it when other people know that. Like, mm-hmm. You can call it cockiness or just confidence, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I want people to know that I'm working this hard, or I want people to know what I'm doing, whether it's, the different nuances that we do with our coaches, the different things we do in the off season with our kids. Like, we don't need to keep things a secret. Like, we want other people to get up, bring their level up, because it's going to bring our levels up in the process. So, like, I have listened to all of your guys' podcasts so far, and it gets me excited just about track, because it's kind of one of those things where I love like learning more about every sport. And when you find that you have that many coaches that are like-minded or have that competitive fire, that's a big deal. And it brings everybody's level up. Like, when you are competing against schools that have state championships, behind their belt and stuff, like, you have no excuse other than to try to bring your level up to theirs. Right. Yeah. And that's like, our county's tough in a lot of sports. And so it's fun that we have coaches that are like us, because we know that we're always going to have to bring our A game, and we're always going to have to be thinking about, what do we do extra? Like, what am I doing, 1% better tomorrow than I did today to try to help us get a competitive edge? And I hope they know what I'm doing. Right. Like, I talk with ADs all the time about that. Like the joke is about me with the website. And I'm like, I'll show you exactly how to do the social media and the website and all these things. And I was like, but you're not going to be on my level. Like, I'm not going to let that into my mind that you'll do like everything that I'm doing. So I'll let you know everything I'm doing, but you're going to have to wake up every day and have that as a priority. Because to beat me, I'm waking up every day and thinking like, what am I doing, in all these different areas to get better, for our coaches and for our kids and stuff. And so I hope people know what we're doing. And I love it that you guys started this podcast because people are going to start realizing what we have at Woolley.
All right, I think we are going to move on to our next section, and we've test run this a couple times, so it seems to be working pretty well, and we've had some really good insight from some people. So we have a rapid fire section where we ask some questions, and we want kind of a one-word answer. This is a little bit of a variation of that, where we sort of provide a statement, and you let us know agree or disagree, and then you can elaborate a little bit on that. And so hopefully we're triggering some discussion on some of the key points to your particular event that we kind of brought you on today, which is pole vault. So these are all kind of steering toward that. So I'll start you out. Agree or disagree? All good vaulters have great upper body strength.
So you're saying all good vaulters?
All good vaulters.
I could agree with that. The upper body is a big deal when it comes to your vault. So it depends on what your definition of good is. But yeah, I would say you need some upper body strength to get to the next level.
All right. Okay, next one. Vault is the most technical event in all of high school track and field.
Agreed.
Okay,
no
elaborate
need
a little. Yeah. No need.
I was like, if you guys want to debate it, we could debate right now.
We are the wrong guys to debate pole vault with.
Yeah.
No.
If you want me to elaborate on it, like what other event do you have to basically be explosive? You have to have that speed and agility. You basically have to have gymnastic skills. So your body awareness and things like that. And then just the athleticism of it and the physics that come behind it. It's one thing to jump 10 feet. It's another thing to jump 13, 14, 15, 16 feet, right? And when you get to those levels, the technicality of it is through the roof. It's one of the most technical sports there is, period.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Kevin, agree or disagree? The biggest struggle for a new vaulter is to stay tall and swing through and to stay long rather than that natural tendency to ball up in a fetal position. Gotcha. Yes. Yeah. Agree or disagree?
I would say that is very difficult. Yeah, I would say agree. The inverted C, like trying to make sure you're catching that, right? If you can take an iPad and watch your athlete, and when they're hitting that vault and their chest is high and they have the pole out in front of them, and then when they start their motion, that they're holding onto that inverted C before they make their motion, so that they can travel their body through the pit first before they start going up. That's where you start getting the new heights. Like that's a big deal.
Okay, this is your last agree or disagree question. Speed and jumping ability are nice to have in a vaulter, but they're not the most important thing to have.
Just like we got to tie. It just depends on the levels, right? Like anybody can vault, but just like I've told you guys, like when it comes to like me thinking like I was gonna get recruited to college and go Division II or Division I in football because I really love to be a running back and stuff like that. As I got older and started realizing my speed and my ability to jump and things like that, I was like, well, I'm looking at the kids that are going 16 feet and higher, and they look different than me, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're talking about just the entry level of it, it's not as important, but the higher levels you go, it becomes very important to be able to run fast and jump high, because you are taking out some of that initial technicality of it. And I think we talked about before about just like the two different methods that I knew growing up of that explosive, jump through it like Brad Walker of U High, and he trained with my sister and stuff, but like he could have just explode through, and he was he's like a sprinter, and could probably long jump and triple jump like no other. And like someone like that compared to me, who I have to like sit back, like I have to hit that and try to sit into my spot and let the pull take me through a lot more than somebody like that. And it becomes harder for me as you get higher to compete against those kids that can do that. They just have it a little bit easier because they're jumping to a point before they even have to get inverted and do their stuff, to where I have to get inverted a little bit quicker because I'm not as fast as them and I can't jump as high.
Gotcha. So I want to jump into pole vault specific stuff a little bit more. And maybe before we do, just let me set the table a little bit. First off, with our discussion, and I'll speak for myself, Jake. If I'm wrong for you, then you just let me know. But I hardly know anything about vault. The only thing I really know that is a constant in vault, it is always the last event, and it always takes the longest to get through as a head coach. Like that's what I have to keep wrapping my head around. I love the event. I think it's great. I think you can steal a lot of points there if you have a good vault program. But also vault is unique in our county because other than us and Anacortes, Burlington, well, I guess in Mount Vernon too, but Burlington shares a coach with Mount Vernon Christian. So same guy, Coach Rob does both those teams. Yeah. And LaConner, and Jake, it might have changed since I left, but we just didn't have the facilities, didn't have the coaches to even run that as an event. So we were constantly giving up points all the time when I was there. So the ability to find a good vault coach is extremely hard. But when you have one, and luckily we have a great vault coach here, it's such an advantage at meets, specifically like the county meet.
Yeah.
So can you talk to us a little bit about vault? And I guess the place to start is, you and I had a conversation one time. It was before a football game. And we talked about you as a former vaulter, and you said you had a certain technique and you really didn't start hitting better heights until you kind of switched or something clicked. And you mentioned something about a sit back or a blast through. Can you kind of talk to us a little bit more in depth about that?
Yeah, and I'm gonna apologize about not knowing the terminology like I used to. But one of the things I even did as an adult, like when I was, in college and done with college, was I was traveling to national events and different things for my sister, and watching her at the highest level and getting to see her like in the Olympic trials finals and stuff like that. And I was a lot more, phrase oriented on the different things. But I do know that the things that clicked, like I grew up in a system that we were in a small town in Montana, and we had this coach that was, and I started realizing it when I was in middle school, that like he was like a big deal. And I didn't realize it until I got older of like, there would be kids traveling from different parts of Montana to get trained by him. Mm-hmm. And, when you're young, you just have what you have. And you're just like, oh yeah, I want to pole vault because my brother does it and my cousins do it and my sister's doing it with me, because she was 2 years older than me. But then you find out later on that you're like, oh, like I can be good at this because I have somebody that, one, knows what they're doing, two, is an innovator, and three, just knows the training aspects of it. And so like this coach, Coach Gunlock, was he would build his own things. Like he had like pulley systems, and we had bar work that we do. And there was all these things that I got to do before I even was actually pole vaulting in meets, because I was watching all my I was the youngest one in the town, where two of our families were in the town, and I was watching everybody else do it. And he'd like set me up on the side, and I'd be doing, gymnastics based pole work, where you're going, arms above your head, and you're going, first you're going hip, like to your hip level, then you're bringing your legs up to your, your face level, and then you're going above the bar, and then you're doing little kip ups. And so like learning the nuances of the actual vault itself without being in like running down the runway and jumping with the pole. And like I said, we'd get set up in like a little harness, and you'd be pulling your way through. So I'd be going inverted, and I'm doing that stuff when I'm like in 5th and 6th grade. Right. And so even though as a 5th or a 6th grader, I can't bend a pole, right? I can't do anything other than these little drills that he's given me. But then all of a sudden, when I started pole vaulting, I was just like leagues ahead of everybody else, like all the other kids that I'm vaulting against, because of the fact that I had all these little things. And I think that's like what you're talking about is I started realizing the technicality of it at such a younger age. And it's because of this coach Gunlock, and he's still a family friend. He's like an awesome human being. But yeah, that would be what I'd say is like a lot of kids want to pole vault and they want to just run down the runway, jump up and get over that bar. Well, we wouldn't even have a bar up for most of our workouts. Like everything was about the technical side of it. And we're doing sprinter workouts and we're doing, all these things to like build up to that point. And then all of a sudden, when you get the pole, you're like, oh man, like all of a sudden I went, I'm in middle school and I'm going above 10 feet or whatever it was. And so that was like the transition of being like, oh, this guy's like a mad scientist. Like I didn't even realize this was going to be this good until all of a sudden I started actually pole vaulting and I had all the base aspect of it. So like understanding how to, go from that inverted C, how to, get your body positioned correctly and pike or peak. I can't remember what it was called, like coming out of it. And we do so many drills where we're going through the technical aspects of it before we even vault that I realized later on that I'm like, man, like I didn't know how good I had it. I knew that my family was athletic and, everybody was pretty good at pole vaulting, but it's because of him. Like it's because we were learning from one of the best in Montana.
Yeah. Now you mentioned technical aspects that he was good in teaching. What might be like maybe top 3 technical aspects that a high school athlete must be mindful of when they're vaulting? And that could be athletic attributes. It could be specific to pole vault itself, but just 3 things that a good high school pole vaulter, usually has.
Yeah, I think every coach is going to start out basically working with their kids on being like, you got to be high, right? So like when I'm actually making my plant, that bar is not going to be behind me, right? Everything's going to be out in front of me. My chest is going to be high and I'm going to be exploding through it. And so like, that's like that base aspect of it. But when it comes to like technical things that I think like really helped me out, like one would be like us just doing high knee runs with the pole and slowly bringing the pole down and working on our motion on how we get the bar out in front of us and what it looks like before we plant and stuff like that. And I think those are things that like a lot of schools and stuff around us just weren't doing. Or when it comes to like the bar work of us, getting up on just a parallel bar and working our little peaks and our little pikes, like of getting your hips up, of throwing through. When one of the fun ones I always love to do, because then you bring in like the gymnastics side of it, is when you don't have a bar, but you're trying to keep the bar straight, the pole straight when you're running through, and then get your body inverted, and then you're falling. And then sometimes we're doing things to where we're trying to flip when we go through, just as an athletic type drill, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where we're literally doing backflips, like as we're going through, or gainers, I should say. And so like the different drills that we did with those types of things just got your body prepared to be in that position that most human beings never get into, which is, 14 feet in the air, upside down, and trying to figure out how to get over a pole. And all the different, that would be like my suggestion, is like all the different techniques that you do that aren't the runway with a pole, jumping over a bar, are the most important aspects to pole vault.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like I liked the high knees, like, because I'm always working on like where my pole was as I was running down a runway, but I'm doing it like high knees so that I'm conditioning my body to like be holding and running. The different inverted base tech like drills that we do were always really fun, because then you're just like doing flips and tricks and things like that, but you're also learning as you're doing stuff. Yeah,
that's good.
Can you touch on how that kind of translates into an athlete in terms of what do you want to see, what are you looking for if you were trying to identify someone that would be good at vault? What are the physical and kind of mental things to kind of go through some of the stuff that you just kind of talked about?
I could probably break it down like this. It'd be great to have everything, but like you could say, like, are you somebody who's like a good jumper or a good sprinter, right? You could be a pole vaulter. And that's like the play that us having a good pole vault coach at Woolley, like we can talk to a lot of kids. We're like, are you, can you run fast, or can you jump, pretty well? Like you could do pole vault. We can figure this out. are you a kid who has gymnastics background, or at least is very good with body awareness, right? If you're somebody who's got that core strength, you could be a pole vaulter, right? You could get technically sound enough to where you can combat the fact that you might not be the fastest kid, or you might not be able to jump, because that's part of the thing. Is like some kids do that kind of ride method where you get to that seated position and you have to let the pole do a lot of the work because you're not as fast and you can't jump as hard. And then the third aspect is, are you a daredevil? Are you somebody who just likes to do crazy stuff, right? You could be a pole vaulter. And so when you get somebody who's, has all that to them, then you're working with somebody who can probably go pretty high.
I was gonna say, you gotta be a little.
They always say that about pole vaulters. I call it
crazy.
Yeah.
A little crazy.
You gotta be a daredevil to want to be a pole vaulter.
Well, I think that's why there's a little correlation between people that wrestle and people that pole vault, because there's a little. I'm going to put myself in this really uncomfortable position and compete in it, and I think I think you got to have that mindset.
That's one aspect of it, and then it's also the technicality side of it, right? So like a lot of people don't realize like about wrestling, but like there's a lot of good like people that are good wrestlers that can become good pole vaulters. And some of it has to do with just the mindset. Like if you're a wrestler, and I say this just because I know the sport so well, it's like you will go in and you will do something minor 10,000 times over and over and over. And it could just be your steps, right? Or it could just be your hand fighting drill, or like something that you're doing where you've conditioned your brain to be able to do something over and over and over again. And to be good at something as technical as pole vault, you have to have that mindset of, I'm going to just keep doing this over and over and over, this technique or this one position. And I'm going to try to recreate it over and over and over until I get good at it. And yeah, a lot of people say because wrestlers are crazy. That's also true. Right? But I think that the technical side of it has something to do with that. Like where you can simplify things and try to be good at it, but you have to be willing to put in the work of just repetition and just that constant grind, which wrestling kind of creates too, is be a grinder.
All right, I think we're ready to move on to influences.
Awesome. So we've asked this a lot of our guests too, and so we're curious about your influences, and this could be your influences on sports in general, your influences on your current position, wrestling, whatever, doesn't matter. But who or what have been the 3 biggest influences on your coaching philosophies, and why?
I'm gonna sound like I got a little nepotism in me, but it's because I got a family that are sports oriented. And so like my first initial aspect was my dad was my coach growing up with wrestling. And I had a mom that was just as competitive as he was when it came to making sure that we're doing the right things. So like those two alone probably created, the kids that they created. It wasn't a anomaly that we all became Division I athletes. Like I think that they instilled a lot of that side of sports in us that made us be able to excel at the sports that we did. Because I had a sister that was fast pitch. I had a sister that was a pole vaulter. I had another brother that was a wrestler, and we all ended up Division I. Then when you go into the coaching side of it, my first coach ended up being my cousin. So right when I got done with grad school, I ended up coaching with my cousin, and even to this day, he's one of the best coaches I've ever been around in terms of just like his mentality, his work ethic, like what he kind of puts into things. And I always was just in awe of the way he made people feel. And I think that was like the best part about being with Curtis was he would make you feel like the most special human being in the world. And we're talking about like, kids that, some people won't give the time of day, right? Like he makes those kids feel like they're special and that they belong. And I saw that at a young age, right? I was like 24. And so getting that before I started really getting into high school coaching and in middle and lower levels, that really helped. Job wise, I would say Rhonda, like stepping into this athletic directing job, like having, somebody like Rhonda Morgan being able to guide me through, some of the nuances of the position. Like I always have been confident in myself or know that I do things for the right reasons. But just having her is like, you guys know, there's a lot of schools that won't even come close to having someone like Rhonda. Like she is about as good as you can get.
Yeah. And for the listeners, Rhonda Morgan is our athletic secretary, and she is definitely a godsend. That's for sure.
Yeah. She's just, and another person where she's got a bite to her, but she also makes every kid feel special. Like every kid feels comfortable going into her office and like talking with her and even when it comes to just the emotional support side of things, like I think that she does that better than almost anybody. And so that's just invaluable to have at a school. And the fact that I get to be around it every day, makes me a better person.
Yeah.
Well, kids and coaches. I mean, she kind of plays that role for both sides.
Yeah, she does it for me. You guys know.
Yeah, exactly.
She's my emotional support.
Jake, you want to go into rapid fire? Lead us through that.
Yeah, right before that though, as long as you've got a little bit of time, I wanted to. Could you talk a little bit about? Because obviously you talked about the athletic side of your family. Can you talk a little bit about your sister who was a pole vaulter and kind of what level? And you and I were talking a little earlier, and I just thought that was something that other people would find interesting.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I joked with you guys that I think you're just pulling me on here because you think it's osmosis that I know things because I got a wife that's as high level as she is she's the athletic trainer at Bellingham High, but she's on the, USA track and field staff. She gets to go to Hayward, and she gets to do these, world competitions or national competitions and stuff. And
hey, if we're lucky, she might be a guest if we're fortunate enough to pull.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Like,
yeah, I'll try to swing it.
Right.
So then my sister Melinda was just a phenomenal athlete. I still like we came from a small town, but I still think the argument that like there's no better athlete that's come out of Pulse, Montana than Melinda Owen. And now she's Melinda Withrow. But she was phenomenal. Basketball, volleyball, track. She was hitting home runs in softball and didn't even do that in high school. She was hitting them in middle school. She could pick up any sport and she would be like phenomenal at it. And she, just like me, she had that Mr. Gunlock, she had him as a pole vaulting coach, and just really, you could tell like her wheels start turning as she got into high school and started realizing, how good she could be like through him. And I guess I should have called her and had her talk to you guys a little bit because she knows vastly more than me. But so she started really excelling junior and senior year in pole vault and kind of got to that spot where she had committed to the University of Idaho because we had another cousin who was high jumping there. And then another one of our cousins ended up going down there with her later on too. So there was three of our cousins, or two of our cousins and her were on the track team down at the University of Idaho. But even by the time her senior, she started hitting some marks where like everybody in the country would have been talking to her, but she was just loyal and decided to still go to Idaho. And I kind of joke with her now where I'm like, God, it like you could have been even better if you would have went to one of the programs that actually was like a combine for pole vault. Like she had a coach that basically was like not like the greatest coach, but was very dedicated to trying to make her better, right? And then after she All-American and stuff in college, people saw the potential. And so she got asked to go down to the Olympic Training Center at Chula Vista for 4 years. And so she was getting paid to train down there. And then she's doing all these national competitions for pole vault. And just being able to see that high of a level was just always fun to me. And I would try to road trip wherever she was at. I would pop in the car, from Phoenix, Arizona. And I drove up to Hayward Field at one point, and I almost passed out in the car like at 8 a.m. and almost didn't make it to her event because I was driving through the night and just because I loved watching like that high of a level for one thing. And then also just the aspect that it's my sister and she's at that level. And so that was just, kind of one of those amazing things to just be a part of the family that I get to have a sister like that. So she was in the Olympic trials finals for, I think 2008, 12, and 16. and went 15-3, I think, in the pole vault,
Wow.
and dealt with some injuries and stuff. But I think that it was very impressive to watch, like, the dedication and expertise that she kind of, put to that event was pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, and another pole vault story that I will never forget with you, Kevin, was the first year that you came down to the state track meet, and we were watching Todd Montgomery his junior year get ready to vault. And right before the 2A boys went, the 3A girls had the morning session, and we're all, up in the bleachers ready for Todd to go. We didn't have anybody else competing at the time, and it was getting dwindled down, and we were trying to figure out what a good time for Todd to start warming up was, and relaying that down to Tim, who was down on the infield. And little did we know, two girls from Capital came in right there, kind of opening heights is when everybody else was coming out.
Yeah.
And we got to witness something pretty cool where they were looking for the national high school record. And I think one of them ended up going 14-6 or something like that. And that was a pretty cool moment.
Yeah, they were juniors, and she went at 15, and I FaceTimed my sister Melinda, like, while we were watching it. I'm like,
Yeah.
You gotta see this. I'm like, this is incredible. Like, I'm like, you guys know at this point, like with any sport, like, I just love watching high level stuff. And so, like, something like that, I'm like a kid in a candy store. So we're sitting there, like, getting ready for Todd to warm up, but I'm just like literally on the edge of my seat, just giddy watching these two girls do what they're doing, which is something that, and I think it just, like, kind of goes by the wayside a little bit with the people that aren't in the track, realm.
Yeah.
And you don't really realize exactly how special that was.
Yeah.
Right. Them going 15 feet in high school was unheard of. Right. And so, like, just watching that was so fun. Like,
Yeah. That was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
Track in general is one of the more fun things, because there's just so much stuff going on. You get to see so many, like, high level kids, go, and we get to see multiple classes too. It's just such a fun event.
Different ways to display athleticism. I think that's one of my favorite things about track. So
yeah, you go from the shot put, where it's just like strongman competition, and then all of a sudden you're watching hurdles, and just people look like they're ballerinas, like, going over, like, those things. It's just, yeah, it's such a unique sport. It's so fun to watch.
All right, I think we're ready for rapid fire. This is our last session here, Kevin. So we've found that only Anacortes apparently can follow the directions correctly with this particular format. So we'll see if the Woolley representation can be there. So this essentially is us asking a question, and we're just looking for a 1-word answer, 1 to 2 word answer. First thing kind of pops in your head, and then we move on to the next one. So you ready for this?
Let's go.
Okay, Johnny, you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay, so obviously you were a part of collegiate wrestling. What was your favorite venue to either wrestle or watch wrestling in terms of college?
Vegas was fun.
All right.
Jake, you were hoping he'd say Penn State, weren't you?
Well, Rec Hall's a little.
You're saying, can I elaborate? This is one word, right?
Okay, 1 word.
Yeah.
All right, so Vegas. All right, great. And then, what was your go-to wrestling move or your favorite wrestling move?
I called it a blast single. So I kind of hybrid. I wasn't wait, 1 word, single.
Well, you said blast single. I have no clue what that means, so you can elaborate on that.
Oh, so you guys want to break the rules?
Yeah, we are. Yeah. Hey, it's our
everyone
podcast.
else has. Hell, why can't we?
Yeah. I realized at a young age that I struggled with the, like, being real technical with, like, low level stuff, and I was very explosive. And so if you do, like, your steps correctly, right, like, you can get an angle on somebody and you just run, and you either go out of bounds or else they go down. And that was kind of my mentality with wrestling, was if I take a shot, they're either going out of bounds or else I'm going to get a takedown. And that was the single really helped me once I figured out that I just needed an angle and I could run through it. That was my go-to.
Yeah, that reminds me a lot of my high school wrestling career. Pretty much summed it up right there.
Yep.
Okay, thing you miss most about Montana?
Family.
Okay, in your last rapid fire question, in your current role as an AD, what is an attribute that a head coach must have?
Empathy.
Nice.
Nailed it.
Kevin, thanks again for being with us. We appreciate you hopping on and talking track and field, specifically pole vault. Again, it's an event that I think a lot of people don't understand, and I learned a ton. So I appreciate you being on.
Yeah, glad to be here. Glad you guys are doing this. This is helping the sport, right? Like no matter what you think about, like even if we talk about the views, because they're going to start increasing the more people start finding out about this. Like this helps Skagit County. And so like I think it's pretty awesome that you guys are doing this, and it makes Woolley stronger. And so my feelings about that. You guys are doing something extra. So that's making us stronger.
Yeah, well, this might come as a surprise, and this might be a little insight to our methods, but you notice that you're the first and only Sedro-Woolley coach that's been interviewed on here. So we're trying to learn from our competition, which is always nice.
Oh yeah, I love it. I was like, I've taken notes on a lot of the stuff too. Like I like hearing from like different perspectives and different coaches, and especially like you guys are bringing on people that have coached state champions and stuff like that. And I'm like, you can listen to that, and you don't have to be a track coach to take something, from Anacortes or Mount Vernon Christian or Mount Vernon or whatever, like Burlington. Like you can figure out aspects of what they're doing or mentality behind things, and that'll always make you better. Like I love listening to high level people talk, like just in general. So this is awesome what you guys are doing. And I think our coaches, which I sent it out on one of our Motivation Monday emails, is I think our coaches should be listening to these podcasts too, because everybody can take something out of this.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And we have not had a bad guest yet. Everyone has been super insightful, and everybody's been full of knowledge and willing to share, which has made it pretty cool. So
yeah.
Good. Jake, anything else?
No, we're good. Appreciate it, Kevin. Thank you.
All righty, see you guys. Go Cubs.